video, I am going to talk about Galatians 3:16, how Paul makes a distinction between seeds plural and seed singular. There's been a lot of confusion about this. I'll show you. Just pay attention to the video. Paul is vindicated. Those who have said he didn't know what he was talking about are wrong. All right, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to expose somebody who keeps slandering Paul, slandering Jesus, Tobias Singer. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But just bear with me. Listen to the video to the end. You'll understand what Paul's talking about.
So what Paul wants to make it clear is that the covenant of faith that was made through whose salvation would come, that God is saying that you and your seed, which meaning Abraham and Abraham's seed. And in that he says seed and not seeds, plural. This can only mean Jesus. Now, Jews who are not familiar with Christian literature are going, that's impossible. Christians who are watching this are going, yeah, I know that passage. I hear it all the time in church. So if right now those Jews who would never read the Christian Bible, just taking word for it's there. The reason why Jews who have never been exposed to the book of Galatians are stunned right now is because in Hebrew, there is no way to say seeds.
Tobias Singer is incorrect. He says in the Hebrew there is no way to say seeds, plural. That is incorrect. Yes, it is true that when God was speaking to Abraham and said seed, it is in the singular. And you can see in Genesis 12:17 where the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, unto thy seed will I give this land. And you go down, and yes, it does say, thy seed, Zerah, and it is singular. You can click on here. This is just Blue Letter Bible. Go down here, and it is singular. It is singular. Okay. But here in 1 Samuel 8:15, it says, and he will take the tenth of your seed. And although in the English it is the same as you would say it in the singular seed, not seeds, in the Hebrew, it is the plural of seed. So you can go down here. This is just Blue Letter Bible, where the same word is going to be Zerah, the same word, Zerah. And you can see when you click on it and go down, it's going to be in the plural. The plural. Okay. So yes, there is a way to say seeds, plural, in the Hebrew, and that is demonstrated by 1 Samuel 8:15. So when he says there is no way to say seeds in the Hebrew, that is contradicted by 1 Samuel 8:15.
That means that in the Torah, we don't have the word seeds. We have the word seed. You can't make a exegesis and say, thou that the Torah says seed, zaracha, your seed, and not your seeds, therefore could only mean one, and that Jesus Christ. Anybody who says that is a complete moron. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say it. Or has such a superficial knowledge of the Hebrew language.
Okay, here in the Mishnah Shabbat 9:2, which the Mishnah is respected by the Jews. Apparently Tobias Singer doesn't respect it or doesn't know what's in it. I don't know. But I'm just going to show you that what he says is completely wrong. Now, the Mishnah, this was written by Jewish rabbis, okay, at the end of the 2nd century approximately. And look what he says. Okay, these are Jewish rabbis. They're talking in Hebrew. This is just an English translation of the Hebrew. And look how they're going to make a case based upon the plural of seeds versus the singular of seed in the Hebrew language. And we'll start from right here where this word is. Okay, from where is it derived that in a garden bed that is 6 by 6 handbreadths, that one may plant 5 different types of seeds in it? He may do so without violating the prohibition of sowing a mixture of diverse kinds of seeds in the following manner. One sows 4 types of plants on each of the 4 sides of the garden bed and one in the middle. There is an allusion to this in the text, as it is stated, quote, for as the earth brings forth its growth, and as a garden causes its seeds to grow, so will the Lord God cause justice and praise to spring forth before all the nations. Isaiah 61:11. Its seed in the singular is not stated, rather, its seeds written in the plural. Apparently, it is possible that several seeds may be planted in a small garden. So, this is from the Mishnah Shabbat, written in Hebrew. That's just an English translation. They're making an argument based upon the plural of seeds versus the singular of seed. Right? So, Tobias Singer doesn't know what he's talking about. When Paul makes the argument in Galatians 3:16, he says this, now to Abraham and his seeds were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. Now, doesn't that sound strikingly similar to what we just read in the Mishnah Shabbat? Yes, it does. It doesn't sound like what Tovia Singer says. It sounds like Paul agrees with the Jews who wrote the Mishnah, at least in understanding the Hebrew language, and Tovia Singer is just out in left field somewhere just saying stuff. He don't know what he's talking about. But what is Paul saying here? Okay, as we just saw in the Mishnah, when different kinds of seed are put in a garden, it has to follow this certain protocol. You could just put, if it's the same kind of seed, say just apple seeds, you could just fill it with anywhere you want in the garden. But there was a prohibition against putting different kinds of seeds. So you couldn't put an apple seed and a mustard seed together and let them intermingle. You had to kind of divide them up. So, and that's where the plural comes in, where you're dealing with a diversity of the sort of seed, not just multiple of the same kind. That would be seed singular. Multiples of the same kind would be seed singular, but when you have different kinds involved, then you bring in the plural seeds. Okay, and that's what Paul is saying here. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. Now, I'm going to show you that Paul is talking about the two sons of Abraham, Ishmael and Isaac, and how he's saying that these are two different kinds. One was according to promise, one was according to the flesh. And Paul is absolutely saying that Isaac and Ishmael are two different kinds of seed. And that's what he says here. And notice how he not only says that there are two different kinds of offspring, but he also equates Hagar to Mount Sinai. Check this out. Okay, and this is in the very next chapter of the book of Galatians, all right, which Tobias Singer does not understand. He doesn't understand Paul. He slanders him all day. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. He's going contrary to the Mishnah. He's saying things contrary to the Talmud. He doesn't understand. Okay? He's saying things that he's saying the Bible doesn't say plural for seed when it does in the Hebrew. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Galatians chapter 4. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. But he who was of the free woman was by promise. So he's saying these two kids were different. They were of a different sort. You got one that was according to the flesh and one that was according to the promise. And that's what Paul is saying. He's saying they're two different kinds. Now, Abraham only had two sons at that time when the promise was spoken. And so, in as much as they were different, although God says in another place that Ishmael is Abraham's seed, when God made the promise regarding Abraham's seed, it wasn't inclusive of Ishmael. And he actually says in Genesis 22 that Isaac is Abraham's only son. So God even made a distinction between the two and distinguished one as the only one of that type. So they were two different kinds of son, two different kinds of seed. So when Paul says God didn't say seeds, but seed, that is specific to one of those two kinds of offspring. And he's making the difference here, saying one was according to this, one was according to that. The promises only apply to the one kind. He says, but he who was of the, in Galatians 4:23, but he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he who was of the free one was by promise. Which things are an allegory. Okay, he's saying they represent other things. For these are the two covenants, the one from the Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. Now, Paul was not literally saying that this woman was a mountain, okay, or this woman was literally the covenant. He is saying that these things are representations of the covenant. One is in bondage, okay, she was a bondwoman. One was in bondage with her child, and the other was free. So he's saying that Christ has set us free, so on and so forth. This is kind of a thing he's talking about. Don't be in bondage again under the law. But he's making a distinction between the two kinds of seed. But he's not literally saying that these two women are literally the two covenants and Hagar is literally a mountain. He is saying that these things represent those. And if you understand the way Paul talks, when he's talking about something representing something else, he will say that is that. But it is in a representative sense. So when Paul is talking about Isaac, and he says, he's quoting the text that applied to Ishmael and Isaac, he's saying that Christ is that seed of promise. Christ is that seed because Isaac represented Christ. And Isaac, God told Abraham to offer Isaac on in the place that he would show him, and he offered him. And what was it, 2,000 years later, Jesus was offered in the exact same place on Mount Moriah, which is right outside Jerusalem. And on the same mountain, and Abraham says, God will provide himself a lamb. This was a picture of the sacrifice of Christ in the same place. God said he would do it, and Abraham said, in the mountain of the Lord it shall be seen. That's what it says in Genesis 22. So these things were representative of Christ. Isaac represented Christ. And so when Paul is talking about the two kinds of seed and talking about how Isaac is Christ, or that seed of promise is Christ, he's saying that this represented Christ. He's not saying that Isaac is literally Jesus, nor is he saying that Hagar is literally a mountain. Okay? You got to understand the way that things represented other things, and this is the way that Paul talks. But if you don't understand Paul, and you don't understand the Hebrew language, and you don't understand the Mishnah, and you just say things, well, then you're going to wind up like Rabbi Tovia Singer.